This episode of the Naperville Moms Network is brought to you in part by presenting sponsor Edgewood Clinical Services, providing comprehensive counseling and mental health services.
Welcome to the Naperville Moms Network and happy November. Erica, Sarita, Patty, and I are joined this month by a special guest, Adam Russo. Adam is the CEO of Edgewood Clinical Services, a counseling company that he founded in 2004. Adam was a speaker at TEDx Naperville on the importance of failure and wrote a book called Unwritten Rules, Real Strategies to Parent Your Child into a Successful Adult. Welcome to the show, Adam.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Today we tackle the issue of letting our kids fail and how this affects them as they mature and grow up. Adam, what caused you to do a little deeper dive on this topic within your career?
About 3 or 4 years ago, I was asked by a junior high school in District 203 to speak with junior high parents about how to help them manage their kids' anxiety. And they were giving me an hour and a half, and I thought, I don't want to spend an hour and a half talking about how to count to 10 and take a walk around the block. Let's do a little bit of a deeper thing. Why do kids get anxious? And so much of it really boiled down to kids they don't want to fail. And they don't want to fail, and as a culture, I was thinking, and as parents thinking, but we're perpetuating this. So maybe I should spend some time talking with parents about how they're contributing to the anxiety and what are some things that they can do differently, rather than putting the blame on the kids just for being anxious. And that's how kind of the whole thing got started.
I know in our Kids Matter board, we did a survey recently of anxiety, and I think it was done in 7th grade and in 10th grade schools, and they took the survey in health class. And one of the number one contributors to anxiety was parental pressure and expectations, and then our system and social media and friend groups, and even from themselves. It's challenging these days.
It is, and parents have this idea. I mean, we have to look at it from a cultural perspective too, right? I mean, everyone, parents think, when they grew up, how were things different then, and and everything. And there was no social media, obviously. But even when you think about just general lifestyle, right? I mean, I think most people today, if they want something delivered to their house, they expect it to come in like a day. Right? I mean, like if it's more than that, it's frustrating. But when you think about it, 8-10 years ago, it would take 4 to 6 weeks, and we were okay with that.
Right. Yeah.
And so what's happened is that and it's true with technology, with text. I mean, everything has happened so much easier over time. Well, you kind of hit a point where you can only make so many things in life easier, and then so a lot of what's happened is that perception of everything should happen quickly and easily has kind of permeated into education and permeated into expectations of parents and kids. That if I can get stuff to my house in a day, well, can't you be making 6 figures right when you graduate college? Right? I mean, why not? And this idea of that there's a process of development that just can't be altered is kind of getting swallowed in culture, because our culture used to have delayed gratification embedded in it, right?
Yes.
I mean, ordering something to your house, it took 4 weeks. Without a cell phone, if you want to call a friend of yours, if you wanted to reach each other, you might play phone tag for 3 days, right? There's no,
I don't even know anyone's phone number.
So culture has changed tremendously, and because of that, it's changed. It's really kind of affected our expectations of how things really should go for our kids.
And the parents are experiencing that shift in culture as well. So I know, a parent my age who grew up with that delayed gratification. Well, now as a parent, I have that instant gratification, and so, you're kind of dumping that on the child too, because you're used to things going faster. And then, I'll talk to my mom or older parents, and they'll say, "You guys are all," meaning parents, "are stressed out." Yes, and so if we're anxious, how are we? Projecting that on our children.
And then talking about the social media piece, right? So then it's like, what you're talking about combined with, oh my gosh, my friend has, their 5-year-old in travel soccer to get ready for the World Cup in however many years. How am I going to keep up with this, right? And so, and if I don't do this, then how are they ever going to keep up with all, right? And so then this whole thing of not only do we want instant gratification, but we also know that if we don't start early, they can't ever hit this point. Yeah. So now there's this whole other subculture that's been developed for acceleration at whether through academics or athletics, and art. I mean, various things at very, very young ages. And then what could be in order to hit the goal of where should kids be when they're 18? How can they all of a sudden be able to just conquer the world? And you can't. It's an impossible expectation.
Yeah.
But that's what parents, we're setting them up for.
Well, and it's hard because if you do that, if I throw my kid into soccer at 5 because I want them to be in the World Cup, what if he doesn't really like soccer? What if he's not not really good at. And so now he's going to spend all these years living up to an expectation that I created, that not even he didn't create. And that just seems so unfair. And it seems like that's not going to work. Like there's no way that that's going to work out well.
Yeah.
Right.
And in the course of that, what happens is, there's this kind of dual piece, right? So on one hand, you have kids, parents are pushing kids to be successful so they can have this great track to success. It's an assured line of guaranteed success over here. And in order to do that, we also, as a culture, make sure that kids have to feel good along the way. So not only do they have to have guaranteed success, they actually have to feel only positive emotions down that road, right? So then what happens is somewhere somewhere along the way, right, bad things happen, right? Because I have not met one adult who lives a stress-free, wonderful, blissful life. I haven't met one. But yet, it's completely paradoxical. Yet we raise kids to believe that actually is going to be their adult life. It's really, as long as you do these things and check these boxes, not only will you be successful in all the tangible ways, emotionally, you nothing bad. You'll never feel anything bad. So then when the inevitable happens, right, when something doesn't go well, because there are, financial issues, marital issues, medical issues, right, social, all these different things come up. Inevitably something happens and kids can't handle it when they're 14, 15. And then we say, oh my gosh, why can't they handle it? Well, when you look back, we were running our kids' homework to school when they were in second grade because we were scared that if they didn't bring in their homework assignment, that would keep them out of PI. Well, see, that's the problem, right? It's not that the kids don't know, it's that we as parents got uncomfortable watching our kids cry. We don't like them feeling guilt, we don't like them feeling shame or any of these other negative emotions. So we shield them from it for so long until inevitably life will throw it at them, and then we're like, oh my gosh, they don't know what to do.
That was actually on the Naperville Moms Facebook page. That was a question: how do I get my child to stop forgetting his homework? I have to bring it every day, and all these moms, the response was stop bringing it. And it's like, oh my gosh! But we, as a society, we automatically want to look for a different solution than that. But you're right. That first time that he is called out for not having his homework, he'll never forget it again if that bothers him.
Sure. I had something just happen yesterday. Christopher started his job at Houlihan's as a busboy, and he needed to bring his Social Security card, which was at my house. And at some point in the day, I was like, hey, just so you know, when you get into the house, it's in this drawer, in this folder, so that you know where it is when you stop by to get it before you go to work. So I go to pick up my other son, and I see Christopher leaving and driving towards my house at like 18 minutes to 4. And I have this anxiety of like, oh, he's going to be late. Like, he has to be there at 4. So I call him, and he says, I said, buddy, so where are you going? He's like, oh my God, Mom. He goes, I don't know what is wrong with me. I completely forgot I had to go to your house. So now I need to go get it. And I had a moment where I did the opposite, right? He's such a good kid and he barely forgets anything. So I was trying to give him a little leniency on his first day of work. And I said, buddy, do you want to turn around and I'll go get it and I'll bring it to work? And he said, nope, this is on me. He's like, wow. And I was like, all right, I really like that sense of personal responsibility. And I had to just battle my own emotion down. Like, oh my God, it's going to be late on the very first day. And the fact is, he's almost an adult. And that happens. And, if he was, he'd have to explain it and face the consequences. So.
Yeah, I feel the environment we're raising our kids in is so competitive, where if a child is not aspiring to be the best or excel or win, just participating is not okay. And I think we keep raising that bar of what is the norm. We live in this notion that everyone's got to be the best at whatever they do. And as a result, it's become almost a society of where parents who have the means, time, and money to give their kids the private lessons, the coaching, their kids are getting ahead, and parents who can't feel like their kids are being left behind. And I think it's just gotten very unhealthy.
Well, and that's where, you're kind of hitting it there, that it's really not about the kids, it's about the parents, right? I mean, ultimately it's about what can parents post, what can parents brag about, what can they want to do, and what's the parents' insecurity. And every study says that there's no real correlation between SAT scores and levels of success in the future, or college attended and levels of success in the future. I mean, these things we put together these ideals in our head that somehow somehow, I mean, and the college ranking lists and all those things kind of perpetuate all this, right? Because people believe, well, you know, if you have to get into one of the top, you know, 15 schools in order to have a successful adult life, right? Well, these top 15 schools are only accepting X number of students. So how do I make sure that my kid is one of those X number of students, right? Because I don't want my, and we've created as parents, like the zero-sum game. Either there's a winner or there's a loser, and if you don't get into this group, you're a loser. Your life is now destined for catastrophic failure, and that is really how most people
pressure
think
that
about
puts on kids.
Well, and then parents get worked up, and then the culture becomes how do you how do you do everything you need to do to get into these schools, even if it means doing things that you're not interested, doing things you don't like, doing things you don't care about. And the whole purpose is totally thrown off. The whole idea of getting into a school is just because you can get into a school, maybe for whatever your interests are, or whatever the case is. I spoke at a health class at NEQA last year. I remember there was a kid who was a senior. He was trying to decide between schools, and he was talking about he was a bright kid. He wanted to go into medicine, and he said that the school that one of the schools he got into has a top-rated this medical program in the country, University of Florida. And he's like, and I said, all right, well, what other school are you torn between? And he said, well, Duke. And I said, all right, well, what's the problem? And he said, well, how do you turn down Duke? And to me, that was such a telling statement, because you're telling me what you want to do, you're telling me why it's important, but because Florida doesn't have the name. It has the program you want, but it doesn't have the name. That's the wrestling match, and that's where it goes to, how are we, what exactly are we teaching our kids? Is it what that you can say or brag about, or is it what you're intrinsically motivated by? And there's a really big line there, and that's what I think as parents that we do quite a bit.
So we have that undue pressure onto the kids, and I think that's one of the reasons you hear about stress, anxiety, mental health issues starting so early on with kids, that it's just a very unhealthy combination we've got right now going on.
Well, and what happens too is that you have this place of you talk about the mental health side and the anxiety and things like that. What you have is we spend so much time telling kids that as long as they check the boxes, everything's going to work out. But again, everyone knows the world is an unsafe, unfair place, and yet we somehow don't want to name that directly for kids, and we don't want to prepare them to face that world, even though we all know that's the world it is. And then we wonder, well, why do kids get anxious? Well, they get anxious because they've been wronged. Well, everyone's going to be wronged. I mean, it's just a part of life. So instead of kind of preparing them for the idealism of let's always do everyone's always going to do the right things. No one's always going to do the right things. Even I can say I want to do the right thing today. I'm probably not going to do the right things today. And it's true so why not just kind of change the mindset of everyone, if we do the best we can and anticipate that we're going to catch some on the other end that's not going to go so well, and how do you deal with it? Not just I shouldn't expect that you're always going to do the right thing to me, and then I should be offended or hurt or harmed when you don't. It's inevitable. Something wrong is going to happen.
How do you deal with this within your own family? You have 3 daughters.
I do, yeah. I know. I wonder how much my kids like me sometimes.
Like we know.
I just feel like it's the most emotionally healthy family.
Everyone's people and everyone's got their personalities. I mean, and my thing is to me, it's always about the effort, right? I mean, I'm not a grades focused person. I say to parents a lot when I present, parents always say, I want my kids to try their best, but I want my kids, I want my kids to get, and I want them to get good grades. But the reality is when push comes to shove, you have to pick one. Because if a kid studies really hard for a test and they come home with a D, a parent's either going to say, gosh, I know you studied really hard for that. Let's talk about what happened, because you must be really disappointed. Let's figure out how we can do it better next time. Or they're going to say, this is not acceptable. This can't be the case. And so therefore the strategy is important, because if you really value the work, you're not going to be so caught up in the grades, that's and so parents really have to decide what they value as far as those process pieces are concerned.
And as an employer, you have those 2 individuals sitting before you in an interview. Who do you want at the end of the day? Do you want the one who can easily get it done for you, or do you want the one who's going to tackle a problem and work at something and come up with, you want the hard worker. You want the hard worker.
Well, because inevitably the one who can easily get it done and won't be able to, and then they won't be able to persevere through whatever that process is going to look like.
Right.
Which is why there's a great book that was written called The CEO Next Door, which was talking about traits of high performing executives, and they went through all these crazy studies. But a couple of the ones that they pulled out was one of the traits that they found was the velocity of decision making. This idea that the quicker people can make a decision, they found that executives who had that trait were more than 12 times as likely to be labeled as high performing.
Wow.
And because the idea was they were able to make a decision without being perfect. They were able to just decide.
They weren't paralyzed.
Exactly. And they said, and during the course of their study, they said that 2/3 of the CEO dismissals that occurred were actually because of indecision, not bad decision. Because indecision was paralyzing to the organization. And so this idea that everyone has to be perfect all the time, and that's so when we think about the culture of having kids check the boxes, do the right thing, stay in this whole and everything will be all right. It's completely counterintuitive to what's going to help them be successful down the line, and that's where again we get caught in this idea of being perfect.
Yeah.
Wow, this is such a great topic. I wish we had like another hour to talk about it. Helping kids learn consequences for their actions and how to manage their own lives at appropriate stages can go a long way into them becoming healthy, happy, self-starting adults. Thank you again, Adam, for joining us today. We'll be right back with more of the Naperville Moms Network. Stay tuned.